If the Africa Twin and the Forza 750 had a baby, it would be this. It's the XADV from Honda. We've been riding it for a good few weeks now, just to see how versatile and good as a maxi scooter it is, or is it a motorcycle? Let's review this adventure scooter. So this is the 2024 Honda X-ADV. It's a very good looking bike in my opinion. It's got that adventure flair, it's still a maxi scooter, it's got upside down forks, and it's got a really nice engine to it with the Honda DCT, the dual clutch transmission. This is the 2024 model, and it was updated in 2021 with a new chassis and tweaks to the engine and the DCT to just make it a little bit more user friendly. It's now about 3 years old from that update. And we've been riding this and really enjoying it in multiple different situations. We've been using it as a daily tool, going to the shops, going to see friends, some bigger, longer commutes on motorways, and maybe a little bit of off-road riding. Nothing too heavy at all, don't get me wrong, but just some dusty trails and stuff like that. Overall, this is a very impressive, versatile scooter. I've really enjoyed riding it. But there's quite a few elements to make this bike or scooter what it is and what I've really enjoyed. There's a few little things that I didn't enjoy so much, but let's just dive into it. Let's start with the engine. So this is the 750cc parallel twin from Honda, of course liquid cooled, and it's got 69 Newton meters of torque, around 57 and a little bit brake horsepower. On the road, this thing is ultimately fun. You can scoot around happily in town, the DCT works nicely. I'll talk about the DCT in a little bit. But as an engine with the rider modes, this thing does not disappoint whatsoever. When I was riding this in town, it feels nice and responsive to the throttle-by-wire input. So like little bits of input to the control and you just smoothly sail along in town. Of course, it's quite a big maxi scooter as you can see. It's quite tall and it is quite heavy at 236 kilograms. But I got on really well with this. Now bear in mind that I'm a 6'3" rider and this is a big maxi scooter. I was thinking that maybe jumping on this, the engine might feel a little bit lackluster. But acceleration on this is phenomenal. And when you're joining maybe a slip road to go onto a motorway, this is really, really responsive and nice. Now in 2021, they tweaked the DCT and they added 4 brake horsepower by just doing some engine internals and little bits and pieces there. The DCT box has been then upgraded, as I say. The first 3 gears have a slightly lower ratio to get you up and running smoother, so the acceleration is there. And then the final 3 gears, they've made a bit taller so you can ride smoothly and you can ride economically if you're commuting about on this on the motorway. As I say, comfort is king here, but so is the engine. The engine is a really nice unit on this and ultimately it does a very good job. If you're taking this off road, you can flick it into manual mode and you can control the gears with the left-sided switch gear. But I wouldn't really recommend taking this for any extended periods of off-road riding. It can maybe do some dusty trails, some slightly lumpy and bumpy bits on the road. And of course, if you go onto some rocky terrain, you might be able to get by with this. But this isn't what the scooter's about. It gives it the versatility and it gives it the maneuverability and the handling, but it isn't about adventuring. If you're looking at that, you'd maybe look at an Africa Twin, for example, because that is an ultimate adventure bike. So let me talk to you about the DCT on the XADV. DCT, if you didn't know, is Honda's dual clutch transmission. And after years and years of refining and tweaks, they're starting to really master it. And this is probably one of the best uses of DCT that you can find. Of course, the latest generation of Africa Twins and basically all of the systems that use DCT are really smooth and fluid. It does take a little bit to get used to, but I'll just give you a quick deep dive or light deep dive on what I think DCT is all about. So when you switch on the bike, it'll always be in neutral. And then you've got a little D button here, which flicks it into gear for the first time. Then on the left switch gear, you have plus and minus. And this is quite a far grip here. So the plus is towards the top near the sort of flashing light bit, and it's above the rear brake. The minus button is on the left side where your thumb would be, and that's underneath the indicator. Now, I will just quickly throw in that I was recently on the Yamaha Y8MT launch in Spain, so click that video and watch it if you want to have a look at how Yamaha have done their automated technology. But on the Honda, it's smooth and it's very easy to use. You can also flick it into manual mode, so you have full control of gears. Naturally, if you're going to be riding off-road, then that's a good use for that. But you flick it into first gear by pressing D, and then from there you're just twisting the throttle. When you jump into the rider modes, that also has an influence on how much the bike is going to hang on to a gear. So if you're in a sportier mode, it will hang on to a gear longer, almost to the red line, so you get each and every gear fully used until it shifts up to the next one. If you're using a more economical mode, or if you're using, say, a rain mode, it will be more likely to shift up sooner so that you don't reach higher into the revs. Of course, that makes it a lot more smoother and natural and fluid to use, and you can always shift yourself whilst in the automatic modes. And ultimately, as I say, the DCT in use on this system is really, really easy and fluid to use. One last thing as well with that, when you twist on, it does flick down a gear so that you can get the most out of a surge of acceleration from a lower gear. So that's always nice. And there is a handbrake on the right switch gear because you can't leave it in gear, and that will lock one of the wheels or the rear wheel and stop it from moving around. So nice and simple. DCT on this is very nice. And if you haven't had a go, it's well worth trying on this XADV because that's the only mode you can find with this bike. There's no automatic CVT or anything like that. It's just DCT or nothing. So you join me at the front of the bike. Just going to talk about the suspension, the brakes, the tyres, the sort of overall comfort and handling of the bike once you're there. Talk about the seat in a second. So up front, you've got a 41mm upside down shock. You've got some adjustment on the shock as well, so you can make it soft or harder. And at the rear, you've got a monoshock with a ProLink suspension. There's 150mm of travel at the rear, 156-ish mil of travel, and I believe it's about 160mm of ground clearance for the actual scooter itself. And that does actually firmly put it into the ability of making it an adventure scooter, which is quite nice. And overall, the suspension and the overall handling of the bike, considering it weighs 236 kilograms, is very nice. I've been very impressed by this, especially going into corners. It's really tall, so when you start leaning, because of your distance off the ground, you feel like you're leaning quite far, when in reality it's not too much. That does mean that, of course, with the bars nice and close to you, you've got a good purchase on the bike and a good control of your cornering. You've got a 17-inch wheel at the front, a 15-inch wheel at the back, and they've got the Bridgestone Battlax Adventure Cross Tourer tyres on, and they have got a little bit of knobbly bits on there as well. Now this bike, I will just say, was delivered to us with 20 miles on, so that means the engine was fresh, the tyres were completely fresh as well, and naturally it was raining when it was delivered, so when I set off with knobbly tyres, I was a little bit fearful that there would be no grip or control at all, but instantly out the gate it was doing absolutely fine, and it was very controlled and grippy, and it felt controlled and grippy as well. So overall, the handling is very nice here. Moving to the braking, you've got twin calipers that are both Nissin at the front, and of course they're 4 pistons, so they've got a lot of control and feel at the front end. And at the rear you've got a single disc and a single pot caliper. Braking is very, very nice on this one, especially when you come in from the higher speeds going into 30 zones and stuff like that. You can really hammer on with the front brake, and then of course you've got a lever brake for the rear, and you just really firmly push onto those. Very nice and very controlled. Especially when you start setting the ABS mode on the actual rider modes. If you have it in the full ABS setting, you can feel the ABS start to click in when you really firmly purchased on the brakes. If you have it a little bit less, you start to feel the bike do a little bit of a little wobble as the braking power comes in. But overall, the control on this one is very, very good. And as a scooter that's leaning into the motorcycle control and handling segment, very impressed with this as well. And whilst I'm down here, wire spoked rims on a scooter is a great, bold look, and I quite like it. So quick shout out to us, Bike Matters. If you haven't already subscribed to us, now's the time to subscribe. So hit the button, maybe click the bell as well so you get notified. Got loads of videos on the way. We've got loads of bikes and scooters to review, so stay tuned. Also, shout out to Lexham Insurance. If you're looking for a motorcycle or scooter insurance quote, you can head to lexhaminsurance.co.uk online to get a quote direct, or you can give them a call and you can get a quote that way. But thank you very much, Lexham. Thank you very much to you as well as the viewer. Can't do it without you. So let's talk about the actual dimensions of the bike. Now, of course, it's got a centre stand and it's currently on the centre stand. So let's take it off that and let's jump on. Now, you've got a really wide handlebar, and that's one of the first things I noticed when I got on the scooter. The handlebar is really wide, which is good because I quite like a wide handlebar. It gives it that adventure feel as well. Now, for reference, the seat height is 820 millimeters, so it's quite tall. But one of the things that the previous generation of XADV had, that this is now sort of adjusted, is the wideness of the scooter. Now, I'm 6'3" for reference, and I can touch the ground, feet on the ground, nice and comfortable, nice and fine. So if you're a shorter rider, you might want to sit on one of these first just to make sure you're happy and comfortable in the saddle, because if you're not, then you could have a little bit of an issue when you're coming to a stop, or maybe when you're doing some low speed maneuvers, when you're trying to find the ground, you kind of surprisingly have to put your leg quite wide. Now, speaking of leg positioning, you've naturally got the standard floorboard here for your foot to go on. You have got a foot forward position a little bit, but the space for your foot is quite limited. Now, I've got a size 10 foot, and there is no way that my entire foot is going to be covered here, and it pokes out quite a bit. This one, you may notice, you may have already seen that this one has some pegs here as well. So, of course, I'm not going to be able to stand on it and balance without the bike moving, but you can put your leg here whilst riding, and that's quite a comfortable position. And if you then stand up, it really does allow some good adventure style control over the bike. One of the other points is, of course, when I took this on a longer tour, I think I did about 200-ish miles in the day. So it was a lot of motorway miles. It wasn't too much fun riding because motorways aren't fun. But I found that this screen actually does quite a good job. I did have to duck in a little bit to get the most benefit out of the screen. And for touring and longer distance commutes and maybe some long days in the saddle, absolutely fine. And there's no issues with this screen at all. I know sometimes people are quite funny with screens, but this one, I really like it. And naturally, when you're riding along and you'll say on the road, you've got a long commute ahead of you or something like that, of course it weighs 236 kilograms, but once it's moving, it feels nice and controlled and balanced. Now, I don't know whether that's just a combination of the wide bar and the foot positioning and where you sit on the scooter, but overall, very comfortable indeed. I would just quickly throw in as well that this is a 13.2 litre tank, and the fuel cap is accessed by a button, twist it open, you're away. Now, Honda claim around 68 miles per gallon, but when I was on that motorway stretch exclusively and on that ride, I got about 180, 190 miles per tank, which is okay, it's not bad at all, but I did have to fill up going out and then coming back. In any case, the onboard computer was reading around about 60 miles as a miles per gallon average. And bearing in mind that that's when I was riding in pretty economical conditions at just 70 miles an hour, cruising along, about 60 miles per gallon is what I got. But that's with me on the scooter, and that's with a full rucksack underneath in the 21 litre storage compartment. Now, what I'll do whilst I'm talking about that storage compartment is access the seat. Nice button here. And this does fit a helmet quite happily, quite comfortably. My one's got a Cardo system on the side that I'm using at the moment, and it didn't fit because of that bulk. But once you're looking into the system, you've got a USB-C plug in here, you've got a little light, got your seat stay thing here, and there's a nice toolkit in there as well. So you can definitely fit a rucksack in there. You can fit this, I think it's a medium-sized lid. Yeah, it's a medium-sized lid, and you can fit that in there comfortably. I think it's the larger lids that might struggle, so you might want to just try your lid in there if you were to look at buying one of these from a Honda dealer. But in any case, it's quite nice to have a storage compartment on the scooter that can actually fit a decent amount of stuff in, like a rucksack and all the stuff you need for a tour. And then you've also got a storage compartment here, and this unfortunately doesn't lock as far as I can see because there's no locking mechanism at all. And you can't put anything in here that's bigger than an iPhone standard size. So my phone in my pocket here is a Pro Max and it just doesn't fit, which is a bit of a shame because you'd want to have somewhere where you can put your phone where it's easily accessed whilst you're riding, but this just isn't the case, unfortunately. You can get a smaller phone in there. Maybe you can put the keyless ignition keys in there, but I just put them in my pocket. So not really sure exactly what you can fit in here other than a few trinkets. It's not very deep either, so it's just going to be maybe a piece of paper. I don't know. So let's talk about some of the technology. Of course, you've got a keyless ignition system on this, and I've got to say, the keyless ignition works very nicely indeed. You've got a button on here that does that. You can also lock it remotely with the little key finder thing. But ultimately, the keyless ignition on the Honda X-ADV is really nice. It's one of the better systems that I've used. On the front of the bike, you've got the push button to basically find the key near you. So if you've got it in your pocket and you press the button, instantly the bike will search for it, find it, and it all comes to life, and it's really nice. The TFT then fires up, and it's a nice little display, I've got to say. It's a really nice system to use. It's very clear and visible. You can adjust some of the settings in here. So you press a long right hold, and then you can go into the display settings. You can change the background, you can change the display brightness, change all of that sort of fun stuff. And in here as well, you can also adjust the rider mode. If you've got it in user mode, you can change it to whatever you want. So if you want to have everything on or everything as low as possible, then you can do that. And I will throw in that you can get the Honda Road Sync app to then pair up to your smartphone to then display some basic information on screen and use the Honda voice control system as well to sort of pair up to your phone if you've got the intercom set up on your helmet. The only issue that I have is the omission of Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which is seen on the Africa Twin, and that works really nicely. As this is sort of similar to the Africa Twin in a few little ways, it'd be nice if this had the Apple CarPlay or the Android Auto functionality. I mean, I've only got an iPhone, so I'm not sure if Android Auto is on this, but I know for a fact that the Apple CarPlay isn't. So that's a bit of a shame because that's a really nice, intuitive system. And Honda already have the rights to use that on the Africa Twin, so why not this one as well? So overall, I would say that this is a very nice system. The TFT is nice, the instrumentation is nice, and the whole interface is pretty nice on this scooter. It's just a shame that there's no cruise control on this scooter. Heated grips are an accessory option, and there is no CarPlay from Apple integration onto this scooter. Just to quickly say as well, the DRLs on this are really nice. LED lighting is very clear and visible, and the indicator lights are always on, which is a Honda speciality sort of thing. So it's just maximum visibility. And I really like the XADV logo that lights up there when you switch the bike on. It just gives it that little bit of added touch. And of course, Honda's a very reliable brand, and we do like Honda here. This is just a nice attention to detail thing that I quite like. So the question you might have on your lips, how much is the Honda X-ADV? Well, it's £11,199 as it stands for this 2024 model. Now you might think that's quite expensive, and I do kind of agree with you. It is quite a premium scooter. Naturally, it's a Honda. Naturally, you're gonna have some basic massive faith in the reliability of this scooter, but it is a little bit expensive. There's a few omissions that make it, you know, why doesn't it have CarPlay? Why is there no cruise control? But ultimately, this XADV was Honda's second best-selling bike in 2019, and it's a very popular model. If you go into Europe, or if you live in Europe or one of the bigger towns and cities in Europe, you'll probably see one of these around. I know every time I go to Europe, I tend to always see at least one of these. It's a very popular scooter. I think the versatility, the style of it is just very appealing to people. You could go for the Forza 750, which is a very good scooter in its own right. But I think this just has a bit of an edge to it. And having that option, whether or not you use it, to go off-road is quite a nice thing. Yeah, it might be expensive. Yeah, it might be a bit unnecessary for an adventure scooter to exist. But we've seen a lot of copycat models now appear, whether or not they're directly trying to copy Honda's XADV, but they exist now. I mean, you've got the Kimcos, you've got some other, well, there's just a few random scooters that just have that adventure styling on there as well, because they're appealing to that market of people who maybe want to have the adventure scooter styling, but don't want to be paying the Honda price for it. So ultimately, this is a very enjoyable scooter. I've really enjoyed having this around, and it's just been a bit of a workhorse for me. Really just enjoyed riding this, enjoying the road, and then having that versatility as a maxi scooter, but then also to use this as a day-to-day rider on maybe some country roads where the road gets a little bit more exciting. The DCT works well, it's got loads of power and comfort. The basic general handling is just superb and up there. And those really are the pros of the scooter. I mean, as I say, it's a very enjoyable scooter indeed, but there are a few negatives, there are a few cons. I mean, there's no cruise control, that would be nice. It's a little bit expensive, but it is a Honda, so I kind of understand that. And there's no 6-axis IMU. Does it need it? I don't know, probably not, but it would be nice to have that, especially for the money. But then if you look at trying to add things to the scooter, it might get a little bit unaffordable for what you're getting. So the XADV was last updated in 2021. It was only about 3 years ago. But if there's a 3-year product cycle on these, perhaps this year at the 2024 EICMA, we'll see a bigger update to the XADV. Perhaps there's going to be a 2025 model that addresses some of those concerns, those limited small concerns, and makes this an even better scooter to buy. I mean, if you want to look at some other alternative maxi scooters, you can click up there for the top right and see where the Honda X-ADV placed on my top 10. But until then, thank you very much for watching. Subscribe, like the video, and I'll see you on the next one. Ciao.